Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ISO Board of Governors General Session meeting. Please note that all audio connections will be muted to minimize background noise. To present a comment verbally, click the raise hand icon located at the bottom of the screen to place yourself in the queue. When it's your turn to speak, simply click the unmute button in the pop-up message that will appear on your screen. For those of you not connected to Zoom and are on the phone line only, please press #2 to place yourself in the question queue. With that, I will turn the meeting over to ISO Board of Governors Chair Mary Leslie. Ma'am, please go ahead.
Thank you, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. I just want to briefly say a few words. I want to thank the staff for the preparation that went into this meeting today, and also thank my fellow commissioners and our WEIM chair for being with us today. We look forward to a very efficient and effective meeting today. We've got a fairly robust agenda. And with that, I'm going to ask the corporate secretary to call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Leslie. And let me go ahead and do that. Governor Borenstein.
Here.
Governor Galitova.
Present.
Chair Leslie.
Present.
And Vice Chair Shorey.
Here.
Excellent. We have a quorum and we are ready to go.
Terrific. We'll begin today's session by seeing if there's any public comments at this time before we begin our agenda.
Yes, an operator, if you can check if there's any public comment for items that were not on the agenda today, we will take them at this point. Thank you.
All right, we do have one raised hand. One moment. Oh, your line is unmuted. You may go ahead. Be sure to click on the unmute button on your screen. All right, so caller Kyle, go ahead. I've hit the unmute button. You should see something pop up on your screen. Kyle, if you're on the phone only line, please press #2.
I think we lost our commenter. Dropped off my screen.
Yes, he's dropped off. Apologies.
That's okay. If he comes back in, we'll let him comment when he does. With that, I suggest that for now we move on.
So we'll proceed to the corporate minutes.
Yes, thank you, Chair Leslie. Board, I need a decision on the February 2nd, 2023 general session minutes from the ISO Board of Governors. Can I have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Thank you.
Jan.
Thank you, Angelina and Jan. Governor Borenstein, your vote, please.
Aye.
Governor Galitova.
Aye.
Chair Leslie.
Aye.
Vice Chair Shorey.
Aye.
Thank you, governors. The motion passes. Back to you, Chair Leslie.
Thank you. And now we'll have the CEO report. Unfortunately, Elliot Mainzer is not with us today, but Mark Rothletter will be giving his report. Mark.
Thank you, Chair Leslie and governors. Before I start the report, I would like to just provide our congratulations to Angelina Galitova for the good news of her reappointment to the ISO Board of Governors by Gavin Newsom. Congratulations, Angelina, and thank you for your 12 years of board service.
Thank you, Mark. We still have to go through the confirmation with the Senate, so let's get through that too.
I know, but it was progress. So
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll just jump into it. As we transition into spring, the bulk electric system continues to face some challenging and volatile weather conditions. We certainly value the precipitation and the resultant snowpack, improving the overall drought conditions in California ahead of the summer. The wind did impact some transmission lines that resulted in some localized issues. However, the weather also created some balancing challenges. However, no NERC violations occurred, and the bulk electric system has generally held up well overall and provided system reliability during these times. At the same time, the utility distribution companies have worked hard to maintain reliability in the distribution system under tremendously challenging circumstances. Finally, the cold temperatures did create challenges on the natural gas system coming into California and the West. But through strong coordination with different gas companies serving the state, we had been able to work through the operational challenges. With regards to natural gas, we did observe natural gas prices that were higher, definitely in December. Those gas prices moderated a bit in the year, where they went from $30.60 an MMBTU down to about $7.60 on average in February. Although still relatively high, the reduction in gas prices is welcome. On February 7th, Elliott and several ISO colleagues did participate in the CPUC en banc hearing on rising natural gas prices. We've provided and will continue to provide additional transparency and data on market prices and observations that we're seeing in the grid to support future analysis and policy discussions. We're now ramping up for our summer readiness activities with outreach and coordination. Among other things, our third annual Summer Readiness Leadership Roundtable is scheduled for May 9th. We are also working closely with the Governor's Office, utilities, and others around the West to make sure we are prepared as possible for what could be another volatile and unpredictable summer season. We have also scheduled operational tabletop drills for May 23rd. Additionally, our team that produces the ISO annual summer loads and resource assessment has been working on this year's report, which will be released in the spring. Recognizing the importance of being able to manage the state of charge of almost 5,000 megawatts of batteries during stressed summer conditions, we are seeking your approval today to extend the minimum state of charge feature through this summer that we temporarily introduced two summers ago and surgically used during stressed summer conditions, till we can implement an approved set of enhancements that will be targeted for the fall of this year. Coming off the February board meeting and WEIM governing body's decision to approve the final EDAM design proposal, along with the Governor's Review Committee Governor's Proposal on Transmission Service and Marketing Scheduling Priority, also known as Wheeling Initiative, the ISO has now shifted into implementation mode. We are drafting EDAM tariff language and fine-tuning implementation details. We will be publishing and seeking stakeholder input on tariff drafts shortly and targeting filing of our EDAM tariff with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission by the end of June. Separately, we continue to work internally on developing the business requirements, and we've started to engage with PacifiCorp, which has expressed their intent to join EDAM. We are also drafting tariff associated with the Wheel-Through initiative that was also approved in February. The first draft of this language should also be out next week, and we anticipate filing that with FERC in the third quarter of this year. As discussed in February, we have continued the stakeholder process discussions on the Day-Ahead Market Enhancements Initiative, hosting 3 workshops already to discuss a narrow but important scope of issues related to the granularity and structure of procurement for the imbalance reserve product. We are now targeting to bring this topic to the WEIM governing body and board for a decision at the May 23rd joint session. This week, we continued our stakeholder engagement on the topic of price formation in the day-ahead and real-time markets, including scarcity, pricing, incentivizing resources to be available and perform during scarcity conditions, as well as fast start pricing that recognizes the value of flexible resources in the market, among other topics. This is another important initiative with implications for EDAM and our broader market design, and we want to ensure appropriate price signals for resources to be valued and actively participate in the market. In support of price formation in the initiative, we have also contracted with a consultant experienced in these issues to help us evaluate all the possibilities. On February 27th, we submitted the final report in response to Assembly Concurrent Resolution 188. The report was prepared by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and transmitted along with a letter from Elliott. We appreciate Assembly member Chris Holden and the entire state legislature for requesting the report summarizing existing studies and papers on regional coordination of the electric power system and the potential impact of cost and reliability for California and the West. We believe members of the legislature will find the report helpful in describing the value proposition of broader regional coordination and characterizing the initiatives that are underway across the region. We've also communicated that we stand ready to assist as work continues to find the most effective way forward for California and the West. There's a lot happening on the transmission planning front as well. The 2022-2023 transmission plan will be released in draft form for stakeholders to comment early April and brought to the Board of Governors for approval at the May 23rd, 2023 board meeting, This year's plan is building on a momentum starting with the last year's $3 billion plan and our 20-year outlook that we released February of last year. The new annual plan will be bringing forward several substantial transmission projects, keying off the California Public Utility Commission's resource plans for the planning cycle, for this planning cycle of about 40 gigawatts of additional new resources needed over the next decade. And that will continue to grow to about 70 gigawatts level for the next cycle's plan. Our planners are making significant changes on how the transmission plan is framed and information is presented as part of our broader, more proactive approach of transmission planning and coordination with resource planning, interconnection, resource procurement efforts underway. These changes focus on the greater clarity on the transmission capacity available to resources in key resource development zones as the system exists today and is being planned for tomorrow. This is also foundational to tightening the linkages between load forecasting, integrated resource planning, transmission planning, interconnection queuing, and power procurement as described in the December 2022 Memorandum of Understanding between CEC, CPUC, and the ISO. With regards to interconnection itself, we have started a complementary stakeholder process to the transmission planning process. The Resource Interconnection Team has launched a new stakeholder process that will address the need for transformational reform and interconnection queuing processes. This process is pivotal to the realignment of the planning, procurement, and interconnection activities, and the team has advanced for discussion a number of impactful proposals on how to achieve these outcomes. We are looking forward to the industry feedback and the collaboration as we develop our final recommendations later this year. As part of that effort, we have also clarified that while Cluster 15 interconnection application window will be opened in early April as originally scheduled, the processing of those applications will be deferred until the next round of process enhancements has actually taken place, and once the large volume of Cluster 14 projects that proceeded to Phase 2 detailed study are processed. As Elliott reported to you previously, more than 200 resource projects are seeking to move forward with these detailed studies, creating major additional workload for the ISO and the large PTOs. Finally, the Western Energy Imbalance Market is on track to bring on 3 new participants in April. The Western Power Administration, Desert Southwest, El Paso Electric, and Avangrid Renewables. All three entities have completed their system and procedures readiness certifications, which were filed on March 3rd, 2023. At this moment, El Paso and Avangrid are still waiting for FERC authorization for market-based rate authority to support their WEIM participation. These authorizations are expected any day, and we are excited to have these partners join the WEIM. This concludes my rendition of the CEO report, and let me know if there's any questions.
Do you have any questions for Mark? That was a
Sure,
very,
currently on the line.
does the board have any questions for Mark?
Actually, Mark, I have one question. Can you say a little bit more about the winter reliability issues? Our peak load has been below 30,000 megawatts, so it's not straining on the system in that sense.
Yeah, it's not a supply strain. It's more around the impact it had on mainly distribution lines, but then localized transmission lines that had impacts in localized areas. It did not affect the bulk, our ability to meet bulk electric system reliability.
So there were some wind-driven transmission, local transmission failures, and that.
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
Got it.
yes.
Thanks.
Yep. You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, Mark, I'm thanking you. That was a robust report. We have a lot to look forward to in May, apparently. I'd just like to clarify real quickly. Roger, can you just clarify the May dates for our next meetings?
You're on mute.
Hi, Mary, it's Days. I just happen to have the schedule handy in front of me. They're the 17th, 18th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was on mute.
Terrific. Thank you. No, that helps. I was just, okay, with that, we'll move on to the WEIM Governing Board Chair Report. Please, we're looking forward to having Rob Konzioka give us his report. Rob.
Chair Leslie, Vice Chair Shari, and Governors, good morning, and thank you for allowing me to provide an update on the governing body. My report today will cover the governing body meeting that took place 2 days ago on March 21st. Most importantly, the governing body received a briefing from staff on the minimum state of charge extension decisional item before you today. With respect to the governing body's advisory role to the Board of Governors, the governing body unanimously supported recommending approval of this decisional item. No concerns were expressed. In Elliot's absence, Mark provided the CEO report. Utah PSC Chair Thad LeVar and Chair of the Body of State Regulators provided us an update on the Bosher activities. Josh Walters, Chair of the Regional Issues Forum, provided us an update on the RIF activities. Then lastly, at this meeting, we received staff briefings on the WEIM benefits through the end of 2022 and status on the WEIM implementation update covering next month's forecasted go live for the latest 3 new participants. And as Mark just addressed, Western or WAPA, Desert Southwest, El Paso Electric, and Avangrid are set to be our new participants. And then he addressed the one issue on market-based rates. So this concludes my report, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have.
And does the board have any questions? Absent any questions, we will move on to the minimum state of charge extension discussion and decision. I'd like to introduce Anna McKenna, the VP of Market Policy and Performance. Anna.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Leslie, and Good morning, Vice Chair Shori and Board of Governors. I'm happy this morning to be presenting to you a proposed change. It is basically a extension of the minimum state of charge constraint that you approved back in April 2021. And it's for a limited time that we need in order to implement additional measures that will obviate the need for this constraint. Also, I wanted to note that the application of the constraint is during very limited circumstances where we experience the most constrained conditions on the system. And, like, for example, back in September 6th last year. So with those two notes, I would like to turn it over to Gabe Murtaugh, our storage sector manager. He's going to walk you through our proposed changes in detail. Gabe?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for that introduction. And I know this has already gotten a couple of mentions, and we have had the discussion with the WEIM governing body. So I will move through this. Let's advance the next slide, please. Okay. As Anna just mentioned, we did ask for initial permission to develop this tool just prior to summer 2021 and April 2021. And really, to set the stage, this was something that was coming out of, right after summer 2020, where the ISO had some reliability issues while operating the grid. And we were really putting together a package of things that we were thinking about for summers 2021 and beyond that could help us with reliability going forward. One of the concerns at the time, in summer 2020, we had very little storage participating on the grid. There were, a few resources, totaling a few hundred megawatts of overall storage capacity, but we were anticipating some very big increases in that capacity in summer 2021 and summer 2022, and frankly, beyond that. Those large increases in capacity did come to fruition. Summer 2021, we were operating in excess of 1,000 megawatts of storage capacity on the system. And last summer, summer 2022, we had closer to 4,000 megawatts on the system. So the numbers have really been going up very rapidly. This summer and beyond, we're expecting even more capacity. So these numbers are going to continue to increase. So this tool is very important. Essentially, what we were thinking about when we implemented it is potential conditions that could exist in the real-time market where these storage resources might not be charged. And because the storage resources aren't charged, it could cause eventually reliability issues. So when you're scheduling in your day-ahead market, you're looking over a full 24-hour horizon from midnight to midnight. And that 24-hour horizon does a really good job scheduling 4-hour duration batteries. It knows that the best time to schedule the batteries is when prices are lowest, or you've got your lowest net loads. And then the best time to discharge the batteries is when prices are highest, or you've got the highest net loads and the greatest need for those storage resources. The system and our market system also knows that if there's a time during the day when a resource, any resource, including storage, is critically needed, it's going to make sure that that resource is there and available during that hour. So for storage resources, that means ensuring that it's going to have state of charge. Now, what we identified in the policy where we initially introduced this is that there could be situations where prices materialize in the real-time market where prices are substantially higher than we anticipated in the day-ahead market. And that could lead to the resources not being charged in the first place, or potentially the resources being discharged prior to those peak really critical hours in the day. So what this tool does is it ensures that storage resources have sufficient state of charge to meet day-ahead discharge awards during a set of critical hours. So it doesn't necessarily, and this is what Anna was saying about the resource only applying during certain very critical days, and then it only applies during even critical hours during those critical days. So we're not applying it blanket, during all hours. It's just a very targeted tool to maintain state of charge during those very specific hours. We also acknowledged when we developed this initially that this was going to be an interim solution. We recognized this was simply enforcing a constraint on the market that was based on day-ahead market outcomes. This isn't something that, a new market product in the real-time market. This isn't something that's necessarily priced in the market. So, we're not giving economic signals for the storage resources to do this. We're just telling them, hey, this is what you need to do. And we thought this was appropriate because we were just using it in these very limited circumstances, but we also acknowledged that we wanted to get a more permanent solution, more market-based solution in place. So let's go on to the next slide. Thank you. So what have we been doing since just prior to summer 2021? Over the last year and a half, we've been working fairly diligently on a policy called energy storage enhancements. That policy, wasn't just targeted as developing a replacement tool for the minimum stated charge requirement. It was really a robust set of stakeholder policy where we were thinking about storage participation in all of our models, day-ahead markets and real-time markets, and a whole bevy of things that could improve how these resources were interfacing with our tools and the tools that they have to tell us what's going on at their resources. So because it wasn't a narrow targeted policy, it did take us a little while to actually develop all of those new tools, but included in those tools were replacement mechanisms for this minimum stated charge requirement. Those included new compensation methodologies for storage resources receiving exceptional dispatches from the ISO. It also includes new tools for our operators to view stated charge for storage resources. And then finally, it includes some additional abilities for our operators to actually specify a stated charge target. So if I wanted to say, hey, I need a resource to be at 100 megawatt hours, they could do this. Whereas today, they have to specify those exceptional dispatches in terms of megawatts. So we agree internally, and our operators agree that having these new tools in place would be sufficient to retire the minimum stated charge requirement, which we did rely on, as Anna has indicated, fairly heavily last year during that heat wave, and that was a critical tool for them. However, we did complete the development of that policy, and we brought that to this body in December of 2022. And in the interim, we've been working very closely with our software development teams and our testing teams to ensure that we can get this software developed and make sure that it's accurate and working properly. And the feedback that we've gotten from them is that it's just not possible to complete the development prior to this summer. We are targeting a fall 2023 release for this software. And we have had communications and conversations with that software development team, and we recognize that this is a very high priority. This is something that our stakeholders are very interested in. So I think we're ready to make the commitment to that fall 2023 date. But in the interim, obviously, we wouldn't have anything in place for summer 2023, which is just coming up here. So that's why we're here today asking for this extension. Specifically, we're asking for an extension through September 30th, 2023. And we think that September 30th is a good date, and that would be sufficient to ensure that there's no reliability issues from storage resources for this summer. Primarily, as I mentioned, we're using this tool in a limited capacity, and we're only using it on days when we have infeasibilities in our day-ahead market. So those infeasibilities are situations where supply is insufficient to meet demand, and those really only happen during the summer months, about mid-June through mid-September. So we think that that September 30th date would be more than sufficient to get us through the summer, and then we really do have a high reliance on that fall 2023 date for a release of our software into the market. So with that, we'll go on to the next slide. We have received stakeholder feedback on this, and we've done some pretty extensive outreach to some of the key players in the market, including storage participants and, of course, the utilities on our system. I think there is stakeholder support amongst the utilities, and you'll hear from Department of Market Monitoring and from the California Public Utilities Commission. But I think even when there was support, there was still this request that the duration that we're using the minimum stated charge requirement be minimized, and there's an ask to get new replacement tools in line in the market as quickly as possible. The storage operation community, both developers and operators, did express concern about this. I think in general, they would like us to get these solutions in place as quickly as possible. They expressed an interest in getting these solutions in place prior to summer 2023. But as I mentioned, as we did our due diligence on when a feasible software development date could be developed, there really was no way to get that in prior to the summer. It's got to be fall 2023 at the earliest. So I think that's where we're at. And my last slide is the motion. So I'll pause here and ask for any questions.
I have a quick question. Oh, Severin had his hand up, but I jumped it first, Severin.
No, I put it up right as you started. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Quick question. So this is going to be temporary only through the summer and only for the real-time market. Do you have a sense, based on last year, on how often we called on these resources and what actually showed up when we did? Did people comply with our ask, since we're not compensating anyone? And then part two of the question is just reaffirming that a permanent solution will have a compensation component.
Yeah, I think to answer your first question first, last year we did use this total of 14 times. It was a fairly, it was a very high peak year. Obviously, we set our record peak load during the year.
Did we lose Gabe?
I think
Your audio has.
Oh.
Anna, do you want to take over?
Yeah, Gabe, can you? Yes, can you speak?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Basically, as Gabe was saying, it was used about 14 times, and we did see, based on our analysis, responsiveness back to it. Now, there were some additional manual actions that needed to be taken during that time, but we did see the constraint both being effective and being responsive back. And then with regards to your question on these kind of measures being compensated in the future, that is exactly what we're trying to achieve, is make sure that there is proper compensation through the process. Now, some of the measures we're putting in later this year will achieve some of that, but we're going to continue to work on market rule changes to capture that in totality over time.
I know. As we all know, voluntary actions only take us so far, so compensation should help.
Yeah, and one of the things I did want to note with regards to that is that this is a tool that's limited to resources that are under resource adequacy obligation to the ISO and obligated to be there during that time. So they do get compensation, if you wish, during the as part of their resource adequacy. And we're not arguing that that's the only compensation they should receive, but it is limited to those resources.
That's good to know. Thank you.
So my question might be better for Anna anyway. We're putting this out later than was originally promised. I know there's always a huge amount of uncertainty in writing the code for these sorts of complex policies. Was there anything else that caused the delay that you want to flag? I'm asking this in the interest of sort of maintaining our credibility when we say we're going to get things done at a certain time.
No, it's a good question. I think it's critical to note that we did complete the design just in December, and you approved it in December. And although we were at that time contemplating we could achieve all the milestones within the time frame we had, what we had designed, there were additional items through our in line, if you wish, for implementation, as well as just a natural progression of software changes and the testing that's required to do so. And as we evaluated that further, it became very clear that it was not going to be accomplishable. These are things that can't always be 100% determined, but we certainly want to make sure that, when we take these matters to you and we approve them with a certain timeline in mind, that we keep to it. This was one of those occurrences where, given some of the software changes that needed to be made, we just couldn't make it on time. And it was a short period of time between December and this summer.
Yeah, it sounds like approving it in December was put us sort of behind pace right there.
Yeah, we actually have been over the years trying to ensure that we have sort of, these contemplated and well-planned releases. It's always risky when you want to have a release that's outside of that time frame, like a summer release items, and we try to minimize summer release items as much as possible. And it is a software development process that needs to be taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
And Anna, just to follow up on that, are you responsible for the software development, or is that a different group?
Well, all of it is under.
Can I just answer that one?
Yes,
sure.
So
Go ahead.
Ultimately, that is coordinated through my COO responsibilities, but it is the responsibility of the technology group under Khaled, and then we've got a project management team and now a portfolio management team that helps manage that. So we look at that holistically. What is our carrying capability for implementing these things? And like Severin said, having that being approved in December 2022, we found that we just we don't have the carrying capability to ensure the reliable, tested delivery by summer 2023.
And Mark, in general, our IT capacity, is it what we need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's our technology, and it's also our business unit capacity. In this case, it also relies on settlement changes, which is in our operations group. So it's a combination of software process changes overall to make sure that end to end we can operate and settle it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will now hear from the Department of Market Monitoring, Ryan Kurlinski. Ryan?
Yeah, hey, good morning, Chair Leslie and Board of Governors. This is Ryan Kurlinski from the Department of Market Monitoring. From DMN's perspective, and I think from operators and most stakeholders' perspectives, the new battery exceptional dispatch tools that the ISO finished designing December last year, those are preferred to the minimum stated charge constraint. And operators have acknowledged that the new tools will allow them to safely retire that constraint. And we agree with stakeholders that the ISO should implement the new tools and retire the constraint before the temporary authority to use the constraint expires this June. But unfortunately, the ISO won't be able to implement the new tools by then. So operators are concerned that without either the new exceptional dispatch tools or the minimum stated charge constraint, they may have trouble managing batteries in the most stressed system conditions this summer. And DMM understands these to be very legitimate concerns. To manage just a single battery through an emergency would require numerous calculations and manual dispatches to produce at various power output levels that would be specific just to that one battery. And managing the entire battery fleet manually this way would be very complex and subject to error in conditions when errors could matter a lot. So given the potential reliability risk of operators not having the automated minimum stated charge constraint this summer, DMM supports the proposal to extend the ISO's authority to use it through this summer. But we do continue to support the ISO implementing the new exceptional dispatch tools and retiring the constraint as soon as possible. So thank you for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions I could try to answer.
Thank you, Ryan. That was really helpful. Any questions from the board? Seeing no questions, we will move on to public comment. Operator, can you see if there's any public comment on this item?
I do see a raised hand in queue. As a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, once you are unmuted, please click on your screen to unmute yourself. All right, let me go to the first person. I see Stephen King. Stephen, go ahead.
This is Stephen Keene from Southern California Edison. Southern California Edison supports the proposed limited extension of the minimum state of charge constraint currently used by the operators to manage batteries under tight system conditions. SCE recognizes that this is not the optimal solution, and it would be preferable to implement the new exceptional dispatch tools. However, those tools will not be available until the fall of 2023. This means that the prudent course of action is to extend the existing tools. DMM also supports the extension and notes in their report that without either the minimum state of charge constraint or the replacement exceptional dispatch tools, managing batteries may be significantly more difficult for grid operators in tight system conditions this summer. Given the rapidly increasing amount of battery storage on the grid and its demonstrated importance in assuring reliability during tight system conditions, it is important to ensuring reliability that operators have the ability during critical hours of the most critical days to maintain sufficient charge in batteries to meet their day-ahead schedules. SCE supports this proposed extension in the use of minimum state of charge constraint until September 30th, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Operator, are there any additional comments?
Yes, we do have one more. Alva, your line is unmuted. You may go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Elvis Svoboda. I am a principal analyst in PG&E's short-term electric supply department, which acts as the scheduling coordinator for PG&E's supply portfolio and its bundled customer demand. I'd like to thank the Board of Governors and the CAISO, and particularly Gabe Murtaugh, for the opportunity to comment in support of this proposal. PG&E supports the minimum state of charge extension proposal and believe it is warranted to ensure system reliability. PG&E understands that the exceptional dispatch tool for batteries to hold state of charge is a software challenge that will take time to develop and validate. Thus, PG&E agrees with the CAISO that there is value in extending the minimum state of charge for reliability purposes until the planned storage enhancement software upgrades are implemented and tested. PG&E agrees with both the CAISO and the broader stakeholder community that this extension will not be necessary when the planned storage enhancement initiative changes are fully implemented. Thank you again.
Thank you. Operator, any additional comments?
I do not see any additional comments in queue.
All right, seeing none, then I'll ask the corporate secretary to read the motion.
Thank you, Chair Leslie. Double check that I am off of mute. I believe I am. Move that the ISO Board of Governors approve management's proposal pertaining to the minimum state of charge extension as described in the memorandum dated March 15th, 2023. And move that the ISO Board of Governors authorizes management to make all necessary and appropriate filings with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to implement these changes, including any filings that implement the overarching initiative policy, but contain discrete revisions to incorporate commission guidance in any initial ruling on the proposed tariff amendment. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Governor Borenstein. Second.
Second.
Governor Borenstein, your vote, please.
Aye.
Governor Golitseva,
Aye.
Chair Leslie,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Shorey.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, governors. The motion passes. And back to
Thank you.
you, Chair Leslie.
Now we will move on to our next decisional item on capacity procurement mechanism enhancements. Again, I call on Anna McKenna. Anna.
Thank you, Chair Leslie. Again, we'll be asking you for approval of some limited changes, but necessary for us to access capacity over the summer that may be needed to backstop should we be not sufficient with the resource adequacy capacity that we have. And that is through a mechanism that we refer to as the capacity procurement mechanism. These are limited changes, but also targeted to enhance our efficiency over the summer. And with that, I will ask Greg Cook, our Executive Director of Market Policy and Development, to walk you carefully through the proposed changes.
Thanks, Anna. Good morning, Chair Leslie and Vice Chair Shorey and Governors. So
as Anna mentioned, this is a proposal to enhance the ISO's Backstop Procurement Authority. This is our Capacity Procurement Mechanism Enhancements Track 1 initiative. We do also have a Track 2 initiative that we'll be taking on this year that we'll be looking at refreshing the soft offer cap that we use for capacity procurement. So we can go to the next slide. Start with a little background. So particularly in the summer of 2020, when we entered into the tight supply conditions in August, it really raised some issues that we were having with our ability to procure capacity under the CPM process. And we have various flavors of CPM that we can use. Particularly, we can do it for our resource adequacy deficiencies, if we exceptionally dispatch a non-resource adequacy resource, or for significant events. And this is what occurred during August 2020. We were looking to procure capacity for the significant event, which was the much higher than planned for heat load forecast that we had during that time. And what we found was that the existing rules that we have for those significant event CPMs could impede our ability to procure what otherwise would have been available capacity. And in particular, when we issue a 30 CPM significant event, we have to do that for a period of 30 days. And so what we're proposing here is to remove some of those restrictions related to that procurement timeline to provide more access to uncontracted capacity. And as I mentioned, this is particularly important during those very tight supply conditions so that we can enable more efficient procurement of available resources. So we can go to the next slide. What we're proposing here, these are some fairly limited changes, but the first one is to allow for flexibility in the megawatt quantity assigned for a significant event CPM designation. What we're talking about here is to allow the ISO to reduce the amount of the CPM award when that designation period could overlap with an upcoming commitment of the resource. So when they could have a commitment such as, a resource adequacy contract or an RMR agreement or things of that nature. And I think, the best way to explain this is through a simple example. So if we had a 100 megawatt resource, it had a 40 megawatt resource adequacy commitment in July, and then that resource adequacy commitment increased to 70 megawatts in August. So they have 60 megawatts of headroom in July, but only 30 megawatts of headroom in August. And if the ISO needed 50 megawatts CPM capacity in mid-July, under this new proposal, we'd be able to procure that 50 megawatts of CPM from mid-July to August. And then when the resource's additional RA commitment kicks in, we could reduce that CPM to the 30 megawatts of headroom that they would have to be sold as CPM in August. We're also proposing another enhancement here that we would allow significant event and exceptional dispatch CPM designated capacity to take on new resource adequacy obligations once that CPM has been accepted. And the reason for this is we would really prefer to have these resources under RA capacity as opposed to being procured under the CPM, and this would allow the flexibility to do that. But in order to do that, those new RA obligations would have to be shown to the ISO as RA capacity, and then this would not apply to non-RA commitments. So the resource would still be prohibited from committing that capacity, for example, outside of the ISO BAA in the event that they had a CPM designation. Okay, go to the next slide. And then the other additional flexibility we're proposing is to allow the ability to accept shorter term significant event CPMs. And so the two examples here on the slide, if you look at the one on the left represents the status quo, and the issue here is if we have, from month A to month B, again, a mid-month CPM designation requiring that 30-day award, if that resource had a commitment to a non-ISO counterparty in month B, they would not be able to accept that CPM under the status quo because they couldn't commit to the full 30-day period. So what we're proposing here is to give the ISO flexibility. If this were the case, that we could simply just provide a 15-day CPM award so that they would still be able to meet their commitment in the subsequent month. And if we can go to the next slide.
So that's essentially what we're proposing, but we also have some proposed improvements to how we're doing our CPM reporting and noticing. The ISO tariff requires the ISO to post a designation report to its website anytime it awards CPM capacity. And what we found is that we think we can do this much more efficiently and effectively through our OASIS systems. We'll be making that change. And then we're also proposing to extend the market notice deadline from 2 to 5 days. And the reason for this is to give us a little more time to do the analysis and reporting on the rationale for why we made the CPM award. And we can go to the next slide. There is general support for this initiative from the stakeholder community. I will note that our proposal is the reflection of feedback that we did receive from stakeholders through the stakeholder process. And in particular, we included the proposal to allow the significant event and exceptional dispatch CPMs to take on those new resource adequacy commitments. That was in response to stakeholder requests. And then we also added some flexibility for the resources and we added some language that at the discretion of the scheduling coordinator to accept those shorter term CPM designations. And we can go to the last slide. So with that, we're recommending that the board approve our CPM Track 1 enhancements proposal. Again, we think this will provide us with critical flexibility that we may need to access supply during very tight supply conditions. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, operator, are there any public comments on this item?
There are currently no public comments in queue.
Lovely, thank you. With that, I'll go back to the Corporate Secretary, Roger, to read the motion.
Okay, thank you, Chair Leslie. Move that the ISO Board of Governors approves management's proposal pertaining to capacity procurement mechanism enhancements Track 1 as described in the memorandum dated March 15, 2023, and move that the ISO Board of Governors authorizes management to make all necessary and appropriate filings with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to implement these changes, including any filing that implements the overarching initiative policy, but contains discrete revisions to incorporate commission guidance in any initial ruling on the proposed tariff amendment. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Governor Borenstein. Second for Governor Galitova. Governor Borenstein, your vote, please.
Aye.
Governor Galitova.
Aye.
Chair Leslie.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Shorey.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, governors. The motion passes.
With that, Roger, we're on to our third item, decisional item today, an amendment to the WEIM Governing Board and ISO Board of Governors compensation.
And that comes to me. Thank you, Chair Leslie.
Welcome.
Governors, what we have is a simple motion for an amendment to the compensation for both the Board of Governors and the governing body, the WEIM governing body. And as you're aware, at times, both bodies have found it necessary to form a working group, which is an informal subset of up to 3 members of the particular body to address certain non-decisional administrative type items. And these groups are very important to facilitate the work of the ISO Board of Governors and the WEIM governing body, yet they have not been previously contemplated and not part of the compensation structure that is in place. So therefore, we have proposed that to address that issue, that we make a modest amendment that for the informal working groups would have a $500 participation fee. So for participation in the working group meetings, there would be no prep fee, and they are limited. So they're very circumscribed to just 3 meetings per quarter or $1,500. And that, just for your information, that fee, the $500, is based on the teleconference meeting fee that is currently in the compensation motion. So we're fitting that into that box in essence. So with that, I'll ask if there is any questions and go on from there.
Does the board have any questions about this? Seeing none. Roger, is it appropriate to seek public comment?
I think it is, yes.
Okay, good. I wouldn't want to skip over that. Operator, is there any public comment?
There are currently no public comments in queue.
Michelle, maybe you could provide instructions again in case somebody joined late. Thank you.
Sure, of course, yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to present a comment verbally, click the raise hand icon located at the bottom of the screen to place yourself in the queue. When it's your turn to speak, simply click the unmute button in the pop-up message that will appear on your screen. For those of you not connected to Zoom and are on the phone-only line, please press #2 to place yourself in the queue. As a reminder, please do state your name and affiliation before asking your question. All right, I don't see any questions in queue.
Thank you. With no questions in the queue, before we take a vote, I'd just like to defer to our WEIM chair. Rob, do you have any comments regarding this decisional item?
Chair Leslie, thank you for this opportunity to respond. And the governing body is very supportive of this proposed motion. I think as Roger has explained, we've had some members effectively doing this for 1.5 years, and it would be very helpful for them to be able to have a formal approach on some compensation to address the amount of work that they have been putting into work required to keep things moving forward. So we're very supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And with
Actually, Mary, I'm just going to take the opportunity to make a comment on compensation generally. I think that we should seriously consider moving towards a different compensation model. I've said this to you to board members, that is less based on individual meetings and tasks and more based on retainer. I think that it's very difficult to measure effort on all of these areas. And so this is not for now, but just for future, I think the board should consider moving to a more retainer-based system.
Thank you, Severin. That is duly noted. And as a part-time board, we fully expect to be giving our time generously, though I think this is appropriate, Rob, and we appreciate you bringing it to our attention. And with that, Roger, we should call for a vote.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair Leslie. Let me go ahead and read the motion. Move that the ISO Board of Governors amends the ISO Board of Governors compensation approved November 14th, 2018, the date of the original compensation motion and the most recent one, to include $500 for attendance at a working group meeting not to exceed a maximum of $1,500 per quarter, effective March 23rd, 2023. And move that the ISO Board of Governors amends the Western Energy Imbalance Market Governing Body compensation, which was approved March 22nd, 2018, to include $500 for attendance at a working group meeting not to exceed a maximum of $1,500 per quarter, effective March 23rd, 2023. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Governor Borenstein. Second.
Second, Jan.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shorey. Governor Borenstein, your vote, please.
Aye.
Governor Galitova, your vote, please.
Aye.
Chair Leslie
Aye.
and Vice Chair Shorey.
Aye.
Thank you, governors. The motion passes.
Thank you, Roger. And with that, we move on to whether there are any questions on any of the informational reports that are in your board book. As you can see, there are quite a few of them. I'll defer to the board for any questions on informational reports. Seeing none, I would officially adjourn this meeting unless there is any additional items. Roger.
No additional items from the corporate secretary, Chair Leslie.
Thank you. Then the meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you all for your participation today.
Thank you. Very
Thank you.
efficient meeting today.
Bye.